Thank you, members. I hope you all enjoyed lunch. We will continue now with the questions. Please be seated. Question 5. Okay. Thank you, members. We're on to question 5 now. We've got about 40 minutes left on questions. And this is from Councillor Penny Gowland about fixed £2 bus fares, and Councillor Neil Clark to reply.
Thank you. As one of those people that Councillor Clark wants to get out of their car, I'd like to ask, how long can people expect to benefit from the Council's recent announcement of the fixed £2 bus fares, please?
Councillor Clark, sorry, I was just a bit dry. Reply, please.
Thought maybe you were going to tell us something something magnificent, Mr. Chairman. Anyway, thank you, Chairman. And just to be clear, it was the government, rather than this council, that recently made an announcement regarding £2 fixed bus fares. But of course, it is relevant to all local authorities with an interest in bus service management and delivery. I'll therefore quote from the official government website. Millions of bus users across England will save money through a new £2 cap on single bus journeys from January to March 2023, backed by up to £60 million to ensure affordable transport across the country. The move, announced by the Transport Secretary on the 3rd of September, will help passengers with travel costs for work, education, shopping and medical treatments over the winter months, while they are facing pressures from the rising cost of living. Bus fares vary across different parts of the country and between bus operators and can reach almost £6 for a single journey in rural areas. The new cap means passengers in those areas could save more than £60 a month if they took 4 single trips a week. The average single fare for a 3-mile journey is estimated at over £2.80, meaning that the new fare will save passengers almost 30% of the price every time they travel. The funding to keep fares down follows the government's announcement of £130 million last month to protect vital bus routes and services across the country, which those on lower incomes in particular rely on. Ensuring the public can access affordable bus fares will encourage more people to choose buses for local journeys, which helps to reduce carbon emissions as the country moves towards net zero targets. The scheme is estimated to take at least 2 million car journeys off the roads, cutting congestion and pollution for everyone. You may remember I mentioned that in the previous answer. Would you like me to repeat that previous answer, Mr. Chairman? No. Introducing the fare cap by January enables the government to work with operators and local authorities to implement a scheme that most effectively delivers real savings for passengers. Operators representing around 90% of the bus market have expressed support for the scheme, and we hope that all bus operators will participate. The fare cap builds on lots of offers around the country in areas with high bus demand, which include daily, weekly and monthly ticket options and promotional offers. Single fares, which are already lower than £2, will not be affected by the cap. The government will continue to work closely with bus operators and local authorities and consider future support to help passengers continue accessing reliable and affordable bus services after March. Chairman, therefore, the final details of the operation of the scheme are yet to be announced, but our understanding is the scheme will operate from the 1st of January 23 to the 31st of March 23. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Gowland, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Despite the best efforts of officers, the people of West Bridgford don't recognise the rosy picture drawn by Councillor Clark. In fact, I think the people of a lot of Nottinghamshire won't. We all want to shop, work, meet friends and family, and even in the case of West Bridgford, go to the doctors. So my question is, how good is a £2 bus fare when the buses are being cut? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
There's a long answer to that now.
Yes, I wonder, when do the questions finish, Chairman? Sorry. I could give you a long explanation to that. I think really what it centres around is something to do with the previous answer that I gave to the previous question. It's about encouraging people to use the bus services. Had the question number 4 question been asked, then I would have referred to, yes, there is a problem with driver shortages, and that's recognised if the bus doesn't turn up. But what we need to be doing is making sure, as I've said before, that we encourage people to use the buses as much as possible. A lot of people in West Bridgford, one of the reasons why West Bridgford is popular is because a lot of people live on the bus routes. And so hopefully they will use the bus rather than get in their cars, because that will help cut carbon emissions as well. So the answer to the question is to implore everybody, no matter who we are, let's all encourage and persuade people to get out of the cars and get on to the buses in order to travel around. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. We now move on to question 6 from Councillor Dave Shaw regarding costs relating to council buildings at Topwick Hay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Bradley to reply on behalf of Keith Girling, who is unable to be with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you provide an update on the costings that relate to the new council offices on Topwiggy Farm, Limby? Is Nottinghamshire County Council on track to complete the work on time and within the original budget?
Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. As the Chairman said, Councillor Girling is flogging himself after death currently in Belgium. Rather him than me, but for a good cause. So I'll answer the question on his behalf. The proposed development at Topwiggy, as we think we've discussed many times, achieved planning consent in July. That was a key milestone in terms of the new building's delivery. It enables our partner ARC to take the project through the latest detailed design stage. And the next stage of the process is to issue a latest estimated cost report for approval by Councillor Girling in his role as Cabinet Member for Economic Development. The project's currently on track and currently in line with all the original budget approvals. Of course, we can all see the potential into the future in the current economic climate for challenges, but as it stands, everything is on track. Obviously, this project represents a huge investment in Hucknall, where it's likely to create jobs and help to fund new infrastructure for the town. We're committed to ensuring that we are delivering services from appropriate modern buildings, reducing our footprint from 17 buildings down to 9 so far, which is saving a significant amount of money and also improving Hucknall residents' access to the County Council, to our services, and it's far greener too, reducing our carbon footprint. As Councillor Shaw will know, we deliver our core services from our revenue budget. That's the day-to-day bank account that ensures we can fund children's services, social care, provide the help and support that our residents expect. That budget also funds things like the maintenance and running costs of our buildings, and it's always very tight. We have some significant care priorities in particular in that budget, so it makes absolute sense to spend a little bit of capital, a one-off investment, to help reduce our annual running costs for buildings. I'm sure Councillor Shaw will agree. We'd much rather be spending that money on supporting and helping people rather than heating or fixing old buildings that we don't need. So we're going to debate a motion later on the rising costs of energy to heat people's homes. I, for one, would much rather spend money on supporting residents in that way than heating big half-empty inefficient office buildings. I say this, Mr. Chairman, because the Ashfield Independents have consistently referred to this project as something that's happening at great cost to taxpayers, when I think most of us, and I'm sure they, if they were being honest about it, all know, in fact, it represents a very significant saving over the medium to long term that will help us to continue to deliver high-quality services for people across the whole county and make sure that this council continues to be managed and run sustainably to the benefit of local residents.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Shaw, do you have a supplementary?
I do, thank you, Chair. Thank you. Would it be fair to say that this development is not in Hucknall, it's actually in Limby, which is in Gedling constituency? Also, the original cost for this development was £14.7 million. It's already at £15.7 million. England's largest council have recently warned that they could make in-year reductions to services and cancel or delay repairs to local roads and infrastructure as spiralling costs adds over 1.5 billion to the cost of the councils. Inflation rate is running at 10%. Yeah, you'll get a question when I'm ready. The figures based on the conducted by the County Council Network and Society of Council Treasurers reveal that estimated cost of inflation 2022-23 for 40 of England's largest councils has risen by 92% in just 3 months. So what contingency plans? What contingency?
We're not supposed to having statements. It's supposed to be a question.
You'll get your question. You'll get your question. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I'll get on with it. I mean, I can stand here all day. I'm not bothered. What concerns me is that this is in Gedling. There's been no mention of any relief to Hucknall's roads. There's been the congestion is absolutely horrendous. The conditions of the roads are horrendous. So what contingency plans have we put in place to fund any overspend of this white elephant?
Councillor Bradley, I think it was a question at the end, yeah.
There was, just right at the end there, I caught one, Mr. Chairman. Go ahead, your time. I think it's worth saying, firstly, in terms of, I mean, having been the member for Hucknall North, bordering Topwigay for 4 years, I do understand which bits of the geography fall on which sides of the line. I'm not entirely sure it's relevant, given that clearly the development borders Hucknall, and quite clearly the infrastructure will be drawn from Hucknall. Indeed, as the member for Hucknall North in a previous life, both at Ashfield District Council and here, spent significant time arguing with Gedling through planning inspectorates and all sorts about housing that was built on the Gedling side of the line, and arguing that the impact would be on Hucknall's local schools and infrastructure. So I'm not sure, really, Councillor Shaw, that particular argument has any credibility. It's quite clear that the challenges will come to the surrounding area, regardless of which administrative lines exist and where. And we want to make sure that it provides a benefit to that whole surrounding area as well, whether that is Limby and Papawick or Hucknall or indeed Annesley and the rest of the surrounding urban area. He talks about spiralling costs. I did try to explain in my original answer the difference between revenue and capital. It seems that it's not quite sunk in. You're talking about the inflationary costs, and of course that applies to both. That applies to the increasing costs of contracts and materials, some of the challenges that we've experienced across and every council or every organisation who's involved in building things is currently experiencing. As I said, there will be latest cost estimates that will come forward. There's significant flexibility within the plan to try and manage and mitigate that as well. But we also have to realise, as I've said, that capital investment is about saving money. You talked about CCN figures there in your lengthy response. You're right, budgets are under significant pressure. The most important budget in terms of delivering services to our residents is our revenue budget. That's the one that we spend on social care, that's the one we spend on our children's services, that's the one we spend on all the things we're going to talk about this afternoon in terms of support for our vulnerable residents. And after all, that's largely the raison d'etre of the council. We're here to offer support in those most challenging of circumstances. As I said in my original answer, it makes absolute sense, even if you add in inflation, even if you add in additional costs, which we intend to manage and mitigate, and we have reserves and plans to do so. It is worth that investment to save several millions of pounds in our revenue budget to be able to continue to provide those services. That's what this project is about. That's what the wider Investing in Nottinghamshire programme is about. And we've come down, as I say, from 17 buildings to 9, saving, I think, the Chief Executive will correct me, about 1.3 million a year, something like that, currently in that revenue budget that we're now not spending on heating old buildings or maintenance on old buildings, but instead we're able to spend on delivering care services, for example. That means when we go into those very challenging conversations this autumn about the budget, and we have to tackle those inflationary pressures, which are very significant and are around the whole country, we've actually got more wiggle room in those budgets, and we will have to potentially it saves us from making some difficult decisions because we have spent that capital money on investing to save within that revenue budget. That's hugely important. There are all sorts of implications to that for the wider council finances. We're making that case to government. We're working with the CCN and LGA and other partners to try and make that case. And as you know, I go down to Westminster and make that case directly. There's also a wider knock-on benefit to Hucknall. We talked about, and the surrounding area. If you want to talk Gedling, to Limby, to Annesley, in Ashfield, of course, it affects a whole wide range of areas. We're going to create jobs in that building that will be there and available for local residents. It will require transport infrastructure, you're absolutely right. It will require bus connectivity. There will be infrastructure that comes to the benefit of those local residents. So I really do find it frustrating. We keep having this conversation about the cost of the building. There is a clear financial benefit, a clear service delivery benefit for local residents, particularly in the area that you represent, Councillor Shaw, that I would have thought you would absolutely snap our arm off for, because it can only be for good news for people who live in that part of the county, that are going to have better access to services, that are going to save money on running costs and instead use it to improve local services and give and provide all of the infrastructure that will come alongside that building. So I would have thought you'd be welcoming it.
We now move on to excuse me, question 7. Excuse me. Councillor John O'Lee about Blue Badgers application process. John O'Lee.
Chairman, thank you. I'll start to put my leg back on, so give me a second. Yeah. As the County Councillor for Balderton Division and personally being a disabled man with a blue badge, I recently applied for a placement badge and was pleasantly surprised how quickly I received it. Having previously been in meetings where some opposition members have criticised the length of time these badges take to process, does a Cabinet member for personnel think my experiences were typical of our response times, and could he explain the most common causes for delays in the processes?
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Gordon, willing to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Lee. John, for your question. When Nottinghamshire County Council receives a blue badge application, we generally allow 5 days for assessment and approval, which includes Department of Work and Pensions checks for applicants who are in receipt of benefits. Once an application is approved, 10 working days are assumed for printing and fulfilment, which is completed through a third-party supplier. In practice, the turnaround is often very much quicker, Mr. Chairman. And from your question, Councillor Lee, I assume you may have a case in point. That said, no two applications are identical, and some do take longer for a variety of reasons. For example, residents do not always provide all the information required or sufficient details about the mobility issues and health conditions, so sadly we have to make further checks. In some cases, relevant payments are not always included, so a team has to resolve this with the applicant. Some applications, as you can imagine, are quite complex and need professional oversight, which again takes additional time. And some applications may need a full mobility assessment with an occupational therapist. In all these cases, there could be long delay, and the standard set for the Department of Transport is 12 weeks. But it's very rare that these applications take this long. Postal applications take longer than online applications. The number of postal applications is reducing year on year. In fact, Mr. Chairman, over 64% of applications are now received online, and that really helps with the turnaround times. There are two additional factors that have recently been affecting our response times. One, as we said earlier on today, and you're all very well aware of this, the fire at County Hall, because of course system issues which we have been working very hard to resolve. We continue to do so. The other, the recent industrial action affecting the Royal Mail, which obviously impacts on the receipt of postal applications and delivery of the blue badges. Fortunately, both these factors are temporary, and normal service should soon be restored. I would like to take this opportunity, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, and thank our customer service team for the marvellous job they do. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Lee, do you have a supplementary?
I do, yes. Thank you very much. The blue badge scheme for some people is life-saving. It's life-changing. It allows people that feel that they can't get out, that they want to stay in their pyjamas all day, that they don't want to go out, a way to get out and enjoy life and embrace life. So I know Councillor Wheeler said he would thank the teams, and I would ask him on my behalf and the Conservatives' behalf and my residents' behalf, please pass over our thank you for their hard work, because I believe in August alone there was 56,000 customer service calls made, and that is unbelievable. So please thank over our thanks. Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Lee, for the supplementary. I would be delighted to do so. In fact, Councillor Wheeler, my namesake, and I met the customer service team, the head of customer service team, Mary Rowney, recently, and we did exactly that in advance of the thanks from Councillor Lee this afternoon. And we'll continue to do so. In fact, we're working on a press release which applauds, recognises and celebrates the hard work of our customer service team. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. We now move on to question 8 from Councillor David Martin concerning adult social care funding, and Councillor Matt Barney to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In July, it was reported to the media that the new government reforms into the cost of adult social care are expected to leave Nottinghamshire County Council with a budget black hole of almost £33 million a year. Do you believe the government reforms are achievable without direct government intervention?
Councillor Barney.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Martin, for your question. And I'm really keen to not bore the Chamber this afternoon, because at full council on the 7th of July, I delivered an extensive answer to the question presented from Councillor Paul Henshaw, which I was also pleased to answer, where I explained that Nottinghamshire County Council must implement 8 pieces of reform to the way it provides social care services over the next couple of years. A week later, and this is why I say I could get quite boring, on the 14th of July, I presented a paper to Cabinet setting out that programme of adult social care reform and explaining how Nottinghamshire County Council intended to respond. The report described the potential requirements, costs and risks to the Council associated with the implementation of these reforms. My answer to Councillor Henshaw's question is published in the minutes of today's Council book, and while the Cabinet report is available to read in detail online, I don't therefore intend to repeat all of that information over again. Now, Councillor Martin, you are indeed correct that I was also quoted in some media outlets, and I'm starting to get used to the fact that the media pick up on stuff that I say. I can't think why. But I could comment that, Councillor Martin, if you were paying close attention to the previous answers that I've given in full on this, then there perhaps would not be need for you to be asking this question again today. But I only say that in jest. I'm teasing, of course. Delighted to answer again. On the 7th of July, I stated that the leader of this council, in his capacity as an MP, had spoken in Parliament and made strong representations to ministers regarding the financial challenge of implementing these social care reforms. And our corporate director, through ADAS, has used these channels to make the same points consecutively to government. We also here in the council need to be as innovative as possible in seeking to meet these costs through internal transformation. At the Health and Wellbeing Board earlier this month, it was agreed that pending receipt of government implementation funding of £862,000 of reserves aligned for protecting social care, these could be used to establish posts and extend existing posts through to March 2023 to progress social care reform. We are also working with other local authorities, again through ADAS, to reduce duplication and achieve economies of scale wherever we can to release the money needed to meet these challenges. However, as I stated, and as I believe I've already very clearly answered in my answers on the 7th of July, we do need to ensure that local authorities with primary responsibility for adult social care delivery receive a realistic amount of new funding to deliver these reforms, especially considering the proactive and effective role we play in reducing the cost burdens falling on our NHS. I commented that the focus of funding discussions in the past has often centred on the health and NHS side of delivery, rather than the excellent and often proactive preventative work done by local authorities such as ours. I said it follows, therefore, that with the large amount of health and social care funding levy money now becoming available, we need to ensure that the authorities delivering the social care element receive a fairer share than perhaps we have in the past. Now, maybe I was being a little too subtle in my previous answers, as I've been over before, Chairman, but I thought that what I was saying was clear. If reform proceeds along the lines set out to date, money will need to follow to implement the reform. And given that the major source of new money coming on stream is the health and social care levy, we are lobbying government to listen. We're lobbying government to act. We're lobbying government to respond, to directly intervene. Call it what you will. But we want to ensure that a sufficient portion of that funding comes here to Nottinghamshire County Council. And I'm sorry that answer was long and repetitive of the answers I've given before. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Councillor Martin, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Chair, thank you. As you'll appreciate, the tumultuous change at the top level of government. Almost all councils responding to the Local Government Association survey on the government's adult social care reform agenda say they don't have the confidence that the funding earmarked for the reforms is sufficient. This is a potential to tip Nottinghamshire County Council over a financial edge, and unless action is taken and the government rethinks its plans, people who draw on care in Nottinghamshire will experience reductions in the quality of care available, and support services or other services will have to be cut. If the government intervention is not forthcoming, what would he rather see? Reductions in the quality of care or other services?
Councillor Barney.
Thank you very much, Councillor Martin. Regarding the tumultuous change in the leadership of our country, I have very few comments to make, seeing as I'm not directly involved. But I would just comment on the fact that a great hallmark, as we've already commented on the comments earlier on about Her Majesty and her long reign, are the way our government and the government operates in this country is able to go through such transitions in such an orderly and incredible way. And I'm proud to be British and proud to see the way we orchestrate our systems in this country. Regarding finance and the black hole and whatever, so we are, as again I think I've said before, and I don't like to keep repeating this because I always end up looking at our leader and complimenting him on his role as both a double-hatter MP, and we are better placed in this authority than most because of his dual role. And now, obviously in the last few weeks with ministerial changes and focus in other areas, and not least the events of the last 2 weeks, I'm sure Councillor Bradley hasn't been banging on doors as much as he had been previously and up until that point. But I have every confidence that going forward, as things settle down in the next few days, that Councillor Bradley will indeed be making the case of Nottinghamshire County Council as loudly as any other leader possibly could in any authority in our great nation. And I hope that the results of that conversation will actually have a wider benefit than just on Nottinghamshire County Council. I hope indeed that Councillor Bradley's interjections at governmental level will have the benefit needed for all local authorities, no matter what political persuasion across our whole country. So thank you, Councillor Bradley, for your incredible service. And well, Councillor Martin asked about the concern. I am, just getting to the last point on cutting services. I don't think there's a member in this chamber that ever wants to see services cut, whether they be bus services, whether they be educational services, but most acutely services with adult social care, changing the lives, affecting the lives of our most vulnerable citizens. My heart absolutely is for those people, and I will do all I can to fight the best case I can while I'm in this job for those people whose lives matter so much, that are friends, that are family members, and I will take this role as serious as I can, within the constraints that we all face as a nation, and indeed the whole world is facing at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Question 9 will have a written answer because, unfortunately, Councillor Mike Pringle is not with us this afternoon. So we move on to question 10 from Councillor Francis Pure-Horan concerning budgeting for capital projects. Councillor Richard Jackson to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, does the Cabinet Member for Finance believe that Nottinghamshire County Council are being realistic when budgeting for capital projects?
Councillor Richard Jackson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank Councillor Purdue-Horan for his question. As I think members should appreciate, setting budgets for capital schemes has always been a challenge for local authorities due to the size of the task timing of delivery and the changing value of materials. As Councillor Purdue-Horan is aware, this has been a particular challenge for some projects since 2020, when we began to be impacted by the effects of the pandemic, the effects of which included worldwide shortages of building materials and resulted in increasing prices for those materials. This should not come as a surprise to anyone, especially members of the former Finance Committee, where we spent some time discussing these challenges over recent years. And I recall the meeting in November of last year, when we discussed a joint report by the then Director of Place Communities and the Section 151 officer regarding resource shortages and contract inflation. That report specifically referenced material and staffing shortages due to COVID, due to Brexit, which were driving abnormal rates of inflation across the construction sector and exacerbated by substantial increased energy and fuel costs. The report set out how ARC and VIA were both impacted by these and how they were trying to manage our capital schemes within a very tough operating environment. The impacts of inflation are, of course, more stark now than when we discussed this back in November last year, due to the impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Consequently, when capital schemes are first agreed into the capital programme, we all recognise that this is based on assumptions of inflation, which are particularly difficult to predict for larger building and highway schemes that stretch over a number of years. When we sat here in this council chamber a year ago, we would not have expected the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the level of inflation that the world is now trying to deal with. Some find it difficult to comprehend, Mr. Chairman, the size and complexity of some of the schemes in our capital programme and try to relate it to buying a car or building an extension. This is disingenuous. Officers here and within ARC and VIA do their best they can to set out realistic budgets for schemes with the knowledge that they have the time, with the knowledge that they have at the time, and they should be supported in doing so.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Purdue-Horan, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, and thank you for the answer. My question is mainly one of concern. Recent news that inflation and delays in land transfers are expected to cause the cost of a new 315-place primary school in East Leek to rise by 1.2 million. The primary school in Bingham, which opened its doors this month in the Romans Quarter development in the north side of Bingham, will require a further 125,000. This time the reason appears to be a new footpath, which I support. Two overspends, two different excuses or reasons. When you factor in the fact that Colliery Way spiralled 8.62 million over budget, how are we adapting to the changing economic climate we face to enable our excellent finance team to do realistic medium-term financial strategies? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Jackson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I mean, anyone who was on Finance Committee for the 5 years that I chaired it will know that we looked at this very regularly. We had latest cost estimates coming to almost every meeting, as you know, Chairman, because you were there with us. And we interrogated those figures. I have a lot of confidence in the officers who are managing those schemes and that they drive value into it. The first thing that happens if we see cost escalating isn't that we just resort to get the chequebook out and fund them. We look first of all as to how we can bring those costs down, how we can modify the schemes. If it's not possible, if absolutely everything has been saved that can be saved, then as a last resort, we find the extra cash. I think if you actually equate inflation within the construction industry, which in some materials is running into multiples, not in percent, hundreds of percentage increases in certain things. Actually, we've done a good job in keeping those cost increases down. But the last thing I would hope anyone would want to see, whether it's in Councillor Clark's division in Bingham primary or it's in the East Leek primary that we looked at, is compromising the quality of the build, because these are buildings that are going to have to last those users for decades to come. So we make sure we get value out of them, but we're not going to take huge shortcuts to drive the costs down beyond what we actually need on the site. As far as the Gedling Access Road goes, it's been discussed many times. It was a hugely complex scheme, as I said in my first answer. A lot of the delays were due to COVID, were due to external contractors experiencing problems, BT, for example, and were due to materials inflation, which was totally beyond our control, and a significant amount of value engineering was done on the project to take certain aspects of that project out to keep the costs down as much as possible. But in schemes like that, it's really important to understand we are the sort of underwriting partner in a wide partnership, which included district councils and government funding, and it's us that take the overall risk. So the impact on us is higher than on, well, the impact is all on us rather than on those partners, but we do cost manage them, I think, as effectively as possible, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I think we have time for one more question. Question 11 from Councillor Jonathan Wheeler concerning Lady Bay Bridge. Councillor Neil Clark to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So will the Cabinet Member for Transport and Environment join me in welcoming the speed with which Lady Bay Bridge was reopened and was repaired and fully reopened with a lorry struck the brick parapet on the 4th of July. This prompt response was a great benefit to residents in the West Bridgeford area, including my own division of West Bridgeford South. We not only use the bridge on a regular basis, but were also affected by the traffic issues inevitably caused by temporary diversions while the repairs were taking place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Clark, Neil Clark to reply.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, and I will indeed join with Councillor Wheeler. I was very proud of the efforts and fast response of everybody involved in the repair and the reopening of Lady Bay Bridge in West Bridgeford. Just after 8:50 a.m. on Monday the 4th of July, police received reports of a lorry leaving the carriageway over the Lady Bay Bridge brick parapet and crashing down onto the road below. I'm sure many of us saw the photographs in the media of the lorry lying on its side beneath the bridge. The first and most important thing, Mr. Chairman, is to say that the driver of the vehicle is out of hospital and recovering well. We contacted the business concerned on Tuesday to receive an update, and it was welcome news. I'm sure we would all want to join in sending the driver our best wishes for the future. The incident was attended by a number of emergency vehicles, and the bridge was closed in both directions with significant disruption to traffic during the rush hour. Nottinghamshire County Council, working in partnership with VIA East Midlands and also Nottingham City Council, immediately began work assessing the damage with a view to repairing and reopening the bridge as soon as possible. A complex clean-up operation was followed by the installation of temporary concrete barriers to allow the bridge to reopen in one direction on 11th of July, after which structural scaffolding was put in place to rebuild the brick parapet. Given the local heritage of the bridge, repair materials were sourced which matched the existing style. The parapet itself has been rebuilt to replicate the previous design, and wherever possible, we reused original materials. The final stage of work was the installation of the new safety barrier on the bridge, and after a final inspection, motorists were able to begin travelling in both directions, again from midday on Saturday the 20th of August. I would like to thank motorists and nearby residents for their patience while we were working to make the bridge safe. They had been delayed quite a lot, Mr. Chairman, and this meant now that they weren't delayed, maybe they could spend more time in their hot tubs, Mr. Chairman. And I'm pleased that we were able to do this well ahead of the original 12-week schedule we had in place. As Councillor Wheeler has pointed out, this fast completion was good news for drivers, residents and businesses in West Bridgeford, but also the wider county and city area and road network. it was especially pleasing that we were able to get traffic flowing in both directions before the Notts County versus Chesterfield football match and the Trent Rockets versus London Spirit cricket match on the 20th of August. This incident, and our response to it, demonstrates the value of Nottinghamshire County Council having a wholly owned highways service provider via East Midlands, who are able to react immediately and effectively in such situations. Of course, this is what local authorities like Nottinghamshire County Council are expected to do in these situations, but we should not take these efforts for granted. I would like to take this opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to thank VIA and all our officers and our other partners involved in the accident response and the subsequent fast repair of Lady Bay Bridge. They did an outstanding job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Wheeler, do you have a supplementary? No. Thank you, members. That brings the end of the hour for questions.
Chair, point of clarification, please.
Yep. What is the clarification?
Yeah. Well, as my question at the end of the list won't be answered because you all spend all this time loving and stroking each other, do I take it then that the question was about Black History Month, right? So do I take it then that we are not doing anything, or we don't care about doing anything, or this council isn't?
Councillor Henry.
Let me finish, please. You all had your time. You all had your time to love each other and to talk about the great leader. Let me have my say. Yeah, but well, you choose not to because that was put at the end of the list. Because it either tells me that this council is not interested in doing anything with this at all. That's my impression. That's the impression it gives.
No,
all right?
No.
End of story.
Councillor Henry, thank you. All questions that don't have time to be aired in this arena will get a public.
It's filibustering. If you need to look at it different. This Black History Month is in October, and you change the order. You put it at the end of the list to make sure it's not answered.
So we didn't do that.
We will move on.
So I'm thinking it's something that the council is not interested in. It's not important enough for them to do that. That's what I'm saying.
That's not a very, very fair thing to say. Sorry.
It's out of order.
Members, we will move on to the motion now. All members' questions that weren't read out will get a written reply. Agenda item 12, notices of motion. I call upon Councillor Paul Henshaw to move the motion, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try not to use my half an hour that I've got to move the motion. They say a week in politics is a long time. So when we think of what happened over 2 years ago, it seems like a distant memory now. But the second week of March 2020, which everybody can remember, was the first week of lockdown for the COVID pandemic. What happened then fundamentally changed the way we think about how we can help each other and protect each other in times of great need. Chair, Council, the response to the COVID-19 pandemic heavily relied on the support and expertise and knowledge of local authorities, particularly our staff and the Public Health Department. It is apparent that this council will play a pivotal role in keeping people safe and warm this winter, just as it did during the pandemic. The key lesson of the pandemic is that we all need to be prepared to discuss a plan of how we react to unwelcome eventualities in the future. And I don't think it's good enough to wait until it's too late. Our group believe that it would be unwise for this council not to have a contingency plan in place. We need a plan as soon as possible to mitigate the impact of the cost of living emergency I think that we all recognise is affecting the people of Nottinghamshire. And this feeling is not unique to our group or indeed to people of Nottinghamshire. Several councils, including borough and district councils in Nottinghamshire, are already considering what plans are needed to help people. Indeed, Mansfield District Council, where I'm now also a district councillor, have just this week, actually on Tuesday at the full council meeting, acknowledged and declared a cost of living emergency. And this was supported by all members of the council unanimously, including Councillor Anderson and the other member of the Tory group on Mansfield District Council. So everyone saw that there was a need to declare the emergency. When we look at the number of people that's going to be affected by fuel poverty and the cost of living emergency, the figures are stark and frightening. Research undertaken by the Child Poverty Action Group, published on the 1st of August 2022, has indicated that the expected number of people living in fuel poverty and spending more than 20% of their net income on fuel will be over 16 million people in England. By January 2023, that figure will be dramatically higher. When I've been talking to the residents of my division in Mansfield West, even with the additional help that's coming from the government, people are still frightened, people are still scared, they are worried about how they're going to meet their energy bills. And this is not good. There are measures, I think, that we as a leading authority in Nottinghamshire can take. Because a lot of these issues will relate to the measures that we actually take as an authority. Each year, 1.3 billion is spent on health services in England on treating illnesses caused by cold homes. Cold homes can cause or worsen a range of serious health conditions, and this was taken from a NICE report. Heart attacks, strokes, bronchitis and asthma. Each year, around 10,000 people will die as a result of living in a cold home. Fuel poverty can also have a significant impact on mental health, and it is a known risk factor for suicide. Public Health England has warned of an overlap between the health impacts of living in a cold home and the COVID-19. Pre-existing chronic medical conditions such as cardiovascular and respiratory conditions, such as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma and heart diseases are particularly badly affected by the cold, and if someone is living in a cold environment in a cold home. This could put an additional stress on the NHS, which is already heavily stretched, or will be stretched in the winter months. We on this side of the chamber think the time to act is now. But as I mentioned, people have been concerned about this issue since the start of the year and have already made and taken action and started to put things in place. Bristol City Council made an announcement in July earlier this year that they had begun to work on implementing a scheme which they have called Warm Places. Warm Places, Warm Homes, Warm Banks, whatever they call it. They have identified 22 potential sites initially which they could use. Bristol City Council's plan to implement their scheme from this October. What the Nottinghamshire Labour Group are asking with this motion is, why haven't we at least asked the council officers to look at this and report on whether a similar proposal might work here in some areas of Nottinghamshire? That's all we're asking. Let's look at it, let's see if we can do something. Whether it's called warm rooms, or there may be other things we can possibly look at, which will mean we take effective action to support people. We need to accept that there is a cost of living emergency. and that we have a, and I don't use this word lightly, a moral responsibility to act. And when we need to get a plan in place, we need to look at it and try and do something quickly, because winter is coming quickly. I hope that members opposite will make the right decision and back this motion. And I ask council officers to provide Cabinet with the information they need to make an informed and sensible decision about how we could go about supporting people through the cost of living emergency we face this winter. I move the motion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. Councillor Kate Ball, would you like to second the motion?
Yes, I'd like to second the motion and reserve the right to speak.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Absolutely tons I'd like to say, but only a few short minutes. So first say, of course, that the Conservative Group have a huge amount of sympathy with the premise of the motion. Of course, we understand and are very concerned about the impact of rising prices, of inflation and other pressures on residents across our county. We've been doing everything in our power to support those residents who need help, just as we did through COVID, through the recovery period and now into the cost of living. The premise that we need to be sparked into action by a motion isn't an accurate one, because we are doing everything we can to try and support local people. Over recent years, some £20 odd million has been shared from here among residents, community groups, charities and other services in direct support of the most vulnerable people in our county. That continues this winter. Just this week we've been finalising the next phases of Household Support Fund due to come on stream in October. But unfortunately, Mr Chairman, the motion doesn't just ask us to agree to that premise, it asks us to specifically support a policy of warm rooms, and I'm afraid that as a policy just isn't the best use of limited funds that we have. We feel strongly that other mechanisms for delivering support will be much more effective. Throughout every other element of our delivery of public services for a long time, we've been working with residents to keep them independent in their own homes for longer. And in this way, those most impacted by rising energy costs are being supported both locally and nationally from those costs, with recently announced cap on prices to £400 discount this winter, council tax rebates, disability support vouchers, to directly being supplied with energy vouchers by councils to heat their homes. So a huge list of support on offer, and we feel this kind of direct help to support people to keep their homes well heated, safe and warm is a better use of funds for residents, better value for limited resources than warm rooms. Plus, of course, Mr Chairman, we do have a network of public buildings, youth centres, libraries and others, just a couple of examples that are open to the public around our communities and available. So as I've said, we accept the challenge and the need for support 100%. In truth, I think that the notion of warm rooms might be more of a kind of be seen to be doing something perhaps than the most effective policy, and I think we can do better, Mr Chairman. I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the national support that's available, as you might expect, and then in subsequent speeches I'm going to ask colleagues to go through the more local support that we as a council are offering, because our entire raison d'etre, as I've said here before, of course, through our normal day-to-day functions, through social care and others, are all about helping the most vulnerable people in our communities. That's why we're all here, and colleagues will share some examples of that. But the national intervention is huge, it's huge. And outside of COVID, where let's not forget government put over £300 billion of support into protecting livelihoods, this year's nearly £180 billion package cost of living help is probably the single biggest welfare intervention ever in the history of our country. That shouldn't be underestimated. That's the estimated value of the energy price cap this winter, plus the £37 billion announced previously in the spring. The headline recent measure, of course, has been that energy price cap at £2,500 for a typical household for the next 2 years. That caps how much energy firms can charge for individual units of energy. So that's based on average usage. That will save people £1,000 off the bat, because that cap was set to rise to £3,500. But some have said that it might rise in the future to £6,000 or £7,000. There is a huge potential saving for residents through that cap into the next couple of years, and it also takes away that uncertainty. We've been concerned about the risk of infinite seemingly rises into the future. That risk is gone for the next 2 years, and it will not rise above that cap. And there's a similar intervention similarly for businesses and public sector buildings, equally important, because of course those organisations provide services or employ people and pay the bills in that way. Government's also scrapping green levies on bills, something I've called for a while, reducing the bills further by £150 per household. I'm all for a transition to greener fuels, and we'll see a lot of that, I think, in the mini-budget tomorrow about energy security. But at this point in time, we're quite rightly, I think, prioritising helping people through a difficult winter. There are a number of measures to secure future domestic energy supply, but I don't have time to go into that. And all these recent announcements, Mr Chairman, are on top of that £37 billion support package earlier in the year that included doubling the energy bill support scheme from £200 to £400, turning it from a loan to a grant that didn't need to be repaid. That starts next month. More than 8 million households will receive a further £650 grant, with the first of 2 payments of that already underway. Pensioners who might be particularly vulnerable to cold homes will receive a further £300 cost of living payment on top of winter fuel payments. That's another 8 million people. Additionally, those with disabilities have a £150 disability cost of living payment. That's 6 million people on top of the £400 and £650 energy payments, and on top of that energy price cap. In May, government also announced a further £500 million for the household support fund, which we have delivered with partnerships with districts and boroughs. That takes it to £1.5 billion. And we've used that to support about 50,000 of our most vulnerable households in the county. So I think it's fairly clear, Mr Chairman, whilst I can't accept the premise of warm rooms is the right one or the right policy for our residents, this is the single biggest government intervention ever outside of COVID times. We're doing our bit here to ensure that we offer support wherever possible. Significant existing plans to go through that, which we're working on, including a big strategic conversation about getting the best out of our assets and those buildings that we have in communities. Cabinet colleagues will lay out more details of those plans for members shortly, but I hope that's understandable as to why we can't support the premise of the motion today.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Richard Jackson.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was expecting a motion like this on the agenda today because I attended the overview committee on the 7th of this month. And quite honestly, I was incredulous at Councillor Fole's assertion in that meeting, which is repeated in the motion today, that the Council is waiting until November, as she put it, to consider what assistance we may be able, willing or required to provide to assist vulnerable people with cost of living pressures. Excuse me for being blunt, Chairman, that's absolute rubbish. Council leader has already explained the scale of support that's been and will continue to be offered by central government on a national scale, and a significant proportion of this is distributed via local authorities like ourselves. So, for example, consider the role of the Household Support Fund. It's playing in addressing cost of living pressures locally. Phase 1 and 2 of the Household Support Fund have already benefited Nottinghamshire's most vulnerable residents to the tune of more than £11 million, and there is much more to come. County Council recently wrote to over 14,000 people who claim pension credit in the county, whether guaranteed credit or savings credit, to invite them to apply for the extra support they're entitled to. A one-off payment could be claimed of £135 for individuals or £185 for 2 people from the same household who are both receiving those credits, and they have received a letter from us informing them of that. The initiative builds on the significant support that the Council's already provided through the Housing Support Fund in the form of food vouchers to around 30,000 children entitled to free school meals during school holidays last November, in March, and again over the recent summer holidays. And our frontline staff across the county have been working hard to identify those households most in need, where the occupants are not of pensionable age and have no children, to ensure that they too can receive appropriate financial assistance. Chairman, to directly address the question about support going forward, I can tell Councillors Henshaw and Fole that officers have also been preparing for Phase 3 of the Household Support Fund, which will support those in immediate need in Nottinghamshire through and until the 31st of March next year. Portfolio holders' report for a decision on Phase 3 of that fund will be presented shortly to Councillor Cotty once we have received the final guidance from government on how these monies should be distributed. I don't want to preempt the decision today, however. Councillors Henshaw and Fole should be aware that this is forthcoming to cover the period from the 1st of October through to the 31st of March. In other words, to cover through the winter months, because the Chancellor first announced this £500 million pot of new money over 4 months ago. Indeed, there's a cost of living support fact sheet on the government's website detailing this and many other new initiatives that Councillor Bradley detailed. So either the mover and seconder of the motion are uninformed or incredibly naive in suggesting nothing will happen until November. Or sadly, as is, I think, more likely, just grandstanding with this motion designed to mislead the public and steal some credit for themselves from Conservative-led initiatives that they know are already in the pipeline. The draft central government guidance on the Household Support Fund Phase 3 was announced on the 30th of August and outlined the only restriction would be that every area must operate at least part of the scheme on an application basis. In a similar way to the previous round, residents will have the opportunity to come forward and to ask for support, but local authorities will have some flexibility on how the fund can be run to best meet local need. Chairman, we shouldn't forget this targeted household support fund money comes on top of the existing information and signposting we provide residents through our website or through the customer service centre on the benefits that are available to them. The website provides links and signposts to financial support for residents and community groups. There's a specific cost of living support linked to the government's freshly announced Help for Households initiative, which the council leader has already outlined. When residents follow the link, the council's website, they will find further specific pages and guidance on income support, help with energy bills, help with childcare costs, housing support, help with transport costs, help finding work, together with information on discounts and offers that are available from businesses locally to help with the cost of living pressures. So, Chairman, the first required action in this motion is based on a false premise that the County Council and the Government aren't already providing a wide range of cost of living support. Frankly, it's nonsense, Mr. Chairman. I've had my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jim Creamer.
Thank you, Chairman. And so far, thanks for the actual extreme detail in how much money has been spent here, there and everywhere, which I'm sure it is, and every little bit is welcome. But the point at the moment is energy bills are doubling. There's more and more people actually going into fuel poverty. We're giving them pence when they need pounds. Now, the whole point of this is to actually give someplace warm, so when they can't actually warm their own homes, they can actually go someplace. And we're asking you to look at it. We're not demanding we do. We're asking you to look at it and see if we can. Libraries, our buildings, etc. We are entering a state of emergency. Food banks are having to watch out what they actually give, not because of the food they're given, because if it needs heating, they can't do it. So we are now asking you to actually look at and see what else we can do. It doesn't mitigate all this nice money, everything you've said, which are 100% accurate about money's coming from here, money's coming from there, but the bills are doubling, and that doesn't cover the doubling. People are already in fuel poverty, more people entering it. This is tinkering at the edges. We're going to have to do something in line with COVID, and we want to get ready to actually do it now. So we're asking you to look at it. We're asking you to actually realise that people are at the bottom. There's more and more people, and I keep saying this, entering fuel poverty. And it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. If we're going to pray for anything, it has to be a mild winter. If we get a bad winter, God knows what's going to happen. So please, look at it. Don't say it's a false premise and us being naive. We're not being naive, and we're not grandstanding. We're recognising a problem and asking you to re-recognise a problem you already realise you've got. But I don't think you know the state that it's actually in at the moment. And the moment at the moment is absolutely dire. And we need to actually help people and do what we can when we can. And we're asking you to get in advance of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Councillor John Cotty.
Thank you, Chairman. The distribution of the Household Support Fund is a responsibility that lies within my remit as Cabinet Member for Communities. It has a major cost-cutting relevance to other Cabinet members such as adult social care, public health, children and young people and of course finance. As Councillor Jackson just explained, Phase 3 of the Household Support Fund begins on October the 1st, and its primary purpose will be to support households who face the greatest challenges due to the rising cost of living. This is in addition to the many other ways we've already invested public money in services and initiatives to address the issue. This motion is ludicrous in suggesting that cost of living support is somehow on hold and not considered important until November. We are awaiting final details from the government on Phase 3, so it'd be wrong for me to announce our plans today, although it is tempting to do so. Even before the Council's scrutiny process gets its teeth into reviewing our cost of living support to date, officers have already scrutinised the outcomes of the delivery of Phases 1 and 2 and have incorporated their learning into the plans for the next phase. A forthcoming delegated decision will be coming, as Councillor Jackson said, but I can tell members that this planning has included how best to manage timescales, the importance of early communication with residents, the use of intelligent-led approaches to target support accurately and effectively, and acting on feedback from the HSF Partnership Steering Group, which contains professionals from borough, district and county councils and partners such as Department of Work and Pensions. It is for the Overview Committee to decide what should be scrutinised and when, but working with the Council Leader and fellow Cabinet members, I will ensure that appropriate costs of living support get to those who need it this winter. Chairman, the second suggested action in this motion puzzles me. The premise is to create free, warm spaces where people can spend time so they can save money on their heating bills and avoid isolation and loneliness, and I've got no problem with that. I'm aware of inflation-driven pressures on energy and goods prices due to events beyond the Council's control in the Ukraine, and I accept that this will impact on certain vulnerable groups in this county. Hence the targeted support we are providing. But therein lies the point. What matters here is it is actually practically available of warm, safe public facilities for people to use, or it is giving such a provision a new catchy slogan like War Homes. In my opinion, the answer obviously is the availability of warm, safe facilities, in which case, Chairman, we already have these. We don't happen to call them warm rooms, because that would imply that this is their only purpose. Rather, we have open, free-to-use public buildings such as our libraries, and thanks to the Conservative administration, we still have 60 libraries located in communities across the whole of Nottinghamshire, far more than most other councils across the country. Excuse me. Nottinghamshire County Council, through Inspire, realised many years ago that the future of our libraries was far more about than just lending books. It designed the layout of many of our facilities to be modernised to provide exactly what we're talking about here. Spaces where people can read, meet, socialise and enjoy a wide range of activities, all in a warm, well-lit, comfortable environment. We don't need to rename facilities such as our libraries as warm rooms for a few months to meet the demands of the rather ill-conceived motion to this council. But if people want to use them as warm rooms, then that's what they can be. If you visit your library, nobody asks you to sign a form to declare your purpose for being there. Nobody will ask you to leave unless it's closing. So our buildings follow the same rules, engagements as cafes, public houses, community centres, or whichever other facilities are suddenly rebranded as warm rooms in other areas of the county. Chairman, if someone comes into one of our libraries or indeed a public accessible Nottinghamshire County Council building and explains they cannot pay their energy bill and that they need respite from freezing home, I'm confident that at the very least they would receive a welcome and a seat in a warm reception area while their personal situation is assessed, and would help them in the best way we possibly could to ensure that they are signposted in the right direction and get the help they need. The only benefit of this debate really is that it offers an opportunity to highlight the financial and practical support this council already offers and the future support we will offer shortly to those people who need it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Stanley Cotton. So I announced 30 seconds, a little bit too early now.
Oh,
right. No, you've had your time. You've had your time. So. Thank you. Councillor Lee Waters.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this motion. There is a cost of living crisis. People are going hungry, and I fear that NHS could be overwhelmed this winter. The energy price cap is welcome, but this is funded by borrowing, which the taxpayer will need to pay back and will further compound the issue over time. We also need to support sustainable green energy and not withdraw support. The government should have instead pursued an additional windfall tax on multi-billion-pound energy companies. I would wholeheartedly support warm rooms to help residents keep warm this winter in light of the cost of living crisis. Our libraries with extended opening hours, as an example, would be prime warm room venues across the whole county and would not necessarily increase library running costs, but would help local residents. So why not back the motion? We're just asking you to investigate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Councillor Kate Fowle, please.
I really don't think that you're actually grasping the scale of this. I really don't. And I mean, to call us grandstanding, that's really insulting, Richard. I mean, we're standing here because we care about our residents. When we knock on doors, cost of living is the thing that everybody is talking about. So please don't accuse us of being insulting when we're trying very hard to stand up for our residents. And the big problem I've got with your answers kind of on that side of the chamber is you don't really ever convincingly, as far as I can call publicly, acknowledge the level of this cost of living crisis and the impact it's having on people in this country. And fine, you're doing a lot of stuff. I can see that you're doing a lot of stuff. But it will not be enough. We know that. We've heard people say it's not going to be close to be enough. And the solutions that you're offering either won't work or they'll just be way too late. I mean, just give you an example about kind of your approach and your lack of understanding about what's going on here. Your Prime Minister talks about income tax cuts when 40% of people on low incomes don't pay income tax. So some of this, that won't benefit them. This demonstrates really clearly both on how many families are struggling on poverty pay and how little empathy and understanding you really have of their situation. And talking about what you're considering in the future, okay, you're doing some stuff now, but some of it you're still saying, you're looking at it, you're looking into the future. It's not soon enough. People are really scared. They're really, really scared out there, desperate to know whether or not they'll be able to pay their bills and stay warm and fed. And, I mean, you talked again about sort of scrutinising this and kind of deciding on priorities. You took cost of living crisis off the top of the priorities on the overview and scrutiny agenda and put the property in front of it. Well, clearly that was a mistake on our part, wasn't it? Clearly it was. But that's what you did. We asked for cost of living to be at the top of the scrutiny committee. As far as we understood it, you said yes, and then it gets shifted downwards. As I said before, you put property before people. So please think about your priorities here. And I know you'll say that officers are looking at it, and I'm sure they are, but this needs political leadership from you, from this group now. So please, let's have some really accountable, strong political leadership on this. We've offered you what we think is a fairly simple motion with a practical suggestion. Okay, you can't put everything right, but this is a start. So please think again and please look at it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fowle. Councillor John Wilmot.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. The motion before us today is a very serious one. You've only got to look at the motion that it indicates that 16.7 million people in England will be living in fuel poverty. 57.1% of East Midlands households are expected to be living in fuel poverty by midwinter. And, of course, 30% or more of people will having to fork out, say, 30% of the total income on heating their homes. Is it not serious that many families will not be able to cope with these risks? Fuel poverty will not go away. Just look at the people that will be affected. Pensioners on set incomes, families trying to cope with mortgages, families that are having rent and cost of living increases, the unemployed, and this on top of the loneliness, the mental health, and other serious illnesses that we've all got to contend with. I know the government are trying to help. Yes, you're definitely trying to help. There's no doubt about that. But will it be enough? These are serious times. We do not know how many people could be struggling in the next few months. So what can be done? Yes, I do like the idea of communal warm rooms. But who's willing to help? Well, in Hucknall, many of the churches have been in touch with me and say they are interested in helping to provide communal warm rooms for struggling families. But even churches do not have bottomless resources, so they would need help with funding. That is where government, and of course that's where government and councils come in, with community funding. If churches are prepared to help out, they must get help to keep their rooms heated. What other things can this council do to help this serious situation? Well, we do have a large team of officers well accustomed to sorting out serious problems. That's what I'm told. I suggest they get round a table and investigate all the possible options as a priority. This is a serious situation and must be treated as such. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Penny-Golan, please.
Thank you. I think you're misrepresenting this part of the motion. Clearly, warm rooms doesn't mean renaming libraries warm rooms. As was said, the libraries are open until they're closed. The policy could simply be to extend the opening hours of libraries and churches and other buildings. I'm also quite interested in where the money is coming from. As has been said, this money is coming from tax cuts. We've had 12 years of being lectured about fiscal responsibility when you knew full well where the money went from in the 2008. Now we've got tax cuts and handouts where we know this money should be coming from windfall taxes on the companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. Councillor Bruce Lawton.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As colleagues have said, this motion is wrong to suggest that this Council's ability to assist people with the impact of the energy price and cost of living pressures is limited. Councillors Jackson and Cotty have already spoken significantly and specifically over how the household support fund money has already been invested. We delivered £15.7 million of direct funding to individual families, communities and community groups between March 2020 and March 2022. Local Communities Funds continues to provide revenue and capital funds to communities and voluntary organisations who assist people throughout the county. The Building Better Opportunities programme continues to help our residents in education, training and employment using a three-pronged approach. Supporting Families programme enables vulnerable families to thrive, building their resilience to provide effective whole family support to achieve sustainable positive change, helping around 1,000 families a year. We have accelerated the public health grant reserve allocations to support financial resilience activities, including healthy food programmes and vouchers granting funding to the Nottinghamshire Energy Partnership, which will help vulnerable families. Work is ongoing with the Improving Residents Access programme to review and refresh information provision and how to signpost residents across the county. A communication strategy is in development to support residents of Nottinghamshire. Urgent work is underway to agree appropriate financial mechanisms with the public health grant conditions to enable the authority to act quickly and responsibly in deploying funding. Allocation of staff resources to cross-council cells to drive this programme of work are in place. Funding to Bassett Law Community Volunteer Service to run small grant schemes is being put in place. Funding the CVS to run a small grant scheme addressing food insecurity is being put in place. Increasing resource to the benefits team to support information, advice and guidance to residents, and further investment in existing providers which support improvement of energy efficiency for individuals and for families. Subject to the final decision from the Police Department, we expect to develop a network of trained volunteers as community health and wellbeing champions to spread messaging, enable communities to be more resilient and problem solve barriers of health and well-being. Chairman, I realise some of these initiatives involve direct, immediate financial, practical support for people dealing with the cost of living pressures, while others are about building broader and more lasting economic resilience, like helping people find good quality, better paying work, which enables them to better absorb the variations in the cost of living. The point is that this all matters. In fact, the work we do to help people help themselves is most important to all of us, because it provides vulnerable people with a permanent roadmap away from poverty. This motion doesn't really recognise any of this work, Chairman, which is far more likely to help our residents than sticking labels on libraries saying it's a warm room on various Nottinghamshire County Council or various other Nottinghamshire County Council premises. We need to focus on actions that really matter. And thanks to the hard work and the ongoing work of our officers, we are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Councillor John Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just rise on this one. First, to blast Richard, really. I don't like the idea of the word rubbish being put in it and grandstanding. This is a straightforward motion. It's for people to actually keep the awareness there, make sure people are looking at it, because it might be nice and comfortable. Everyone in this room can go home and switch the light on, switch the heating on, but a lot of people that we represent, and I see that in my areas, cannot do that on a regular basis. They are really counting the costs now. So we need to start, giving it some attention and not making wild accusations. I think what we've got in the motion there is something that's just trying to raise that. What can we do? And the warm rooms is, yes, it's a sort of cliche across the country at the moment. People say, well, we'll have warm rooms here. And I said to our chief at Gedling, what can we come up with? Well, we can come up with, I've got swimming pools that's absolutely throwing heat out, and we've got areas you can sit round them. We've got libraries, like John was saying, we have got libraries that we can use. But could I ask that we have some document, something given to us with all the good information that Ben's put out and other people to councillors, so that we can actually signpost people to those places. And again, look inwardly at this building. How much of this building is being used at the moment? We have a reception room there which is used on odd occasions. It is timetable for people to use it, and they can use it. But if we know that that is going to be empty, why can't the good people of Bridgeford and the Meadows or wherever walk across here, sit there, have a cup of coffee, bring a paper or whatever, and sit there and perhaps save a little fuel at home? And we're therefore using it a lot better. We've seriously got to get our head round some of these things. Some people may have missed it, Ben won't this week. £8.5 billion spent in interest this month, and the same next month. And when 30 billion gets borrowed tomorrow, it'll go up to 10 billion. It'll go like that. We cannot go on like this continually. We have to look at it, and this is really going to affect people coming up, as Councillor Creamer said there, that, if we have a very cold winter, one of those that I can remember way back in the 70s, those that when we used to have proper seasons, if we get one of those, there are a lot of people, and the death rate will go up massively, which you will only see sometime this time next year when you measure it in that. So it's really asking you, Ben, for to give us something, or through the Chief Executive there, Adrian, to give us something when we're doing our searches, when people ring us, when people are contacting us, that we can say, well, you can go there, you can do that. And it might increase the footfall in the libraries if people know they're quite okay to go in there, and there might actually people get engaged in those things. The places that we've got, when I first came onto this council, there was something like 9,000 buildings we owned. Or we ran or whatever. That's substantially reduced now. But those buildings, a lot of them are still there, and a lot are underused. So I'm just asking that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Jason Zarodny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I had an awful lot to add to the debate, but I was struck by the comments, as many colleagues to my right were, about the grandstanding. I thought that was really unfortunate to add into this sort of debate, particularly when we're talking about members of the public who are pretty scared. I speak to people who work who are scared still about the bills they've got to pay, and are completely in the dark about what the government are doing or may come to help them, and they want things that aren't lost in a diatribe of multi-billion pounds. They want to know literally what they can do to pay their bills at the moment. And I think that was really unfortunate, because agree with the motion or not, I think it comes from a good place where people want to show that government of all levels are on their side. And I think comments like that in a debate like this were unnecessary. there are things like the political difference, like green energy stuff. I think that's a debate to have, whether you're on one side of the fence or the other. I'm firmly in favour of it, and I'm not sure taking the levy away when green energy has been dramatically underinvested in for decades, which would have solved a lot of this problem, which would have solved our reliance on gas and on fossil fuels, would have meant that we had an energy reliance that was at a much better cost. So I'm on a different side, but I think that's a proper debate we could have about green and renewable energies. I don't think what's happening in the House of Commons today, the comments from Jacob Rees-Mogg about fracking are at all helpful. It's something I'm vehemently opposed to and have been for a long time. I just don't see him calling people who are against fracking Luddites. I think that's upset some of his own members this afternoon, if you can read the press. But he's also said that anybody that's against fracking is funded by Putin. I mean, it takes away, you'll get home and read this stuff, it's ludicrous. We're talking about people who will be making severe decisions about whether they heat their house or how much they heat their homes, how much they feed their families, and normal working families who are scared. We're really nervous about the national narrative, about what's happening with price caps and not, and whether they'll be able to heat their homes to a sufficient level, or if they heat. I've been discussing with a resident of mine about whether they can switch off everything and effectively live in one room. And that's a really awful decision for people in the 20th century, in a G7 country, to be having to be making, if they can move their bedroom down to one room and heat one room and live in one room. And this is somebody who's served their country, actually, and worked all their life, and who's terrified about how they're going to pay their bills. So whether the government helps or not, I think the real debate is for us to be seen to be on the right side of people, so they know that we're trying everything. And whether you agree with warm rooms or not, or the motion or not, we need to be united in looking like we're trying to help, so that people know that we're genuinely putting differences to one side. And I think there's some stuff about libraries. I listened about Councillor Cotty, and I'm largely agree in terms of you don't want people to feel like there's a stigma, like they're coming in for a warm. And a library should be a great place where you don't have to have that excuse. You can come in and read a book. I'm afraid to say, though, in most of my district, and districts places represented by our residents, where I think that would be a great idea, the libraries simply aren't open enough. And I appreciate none of them are closed. I think that's a credit to you, John. But in places like mine, they're not open. Collingham, in Councillor Darby's division, is open 19 hours a week. Selston is 17 and a half. Skegby, in Councillor Smith, is 14 hours a week. Blidworth, in my mum's ward, is open 13 hours a week. Jacksdale, 11 hours a week. Huthwaite, 9 hours a week. And Annesley, 8 hours a week. People can't go there routinely as a warm, and I think we should look at that, because in some of those places they're part of other community buildings, so they are open, we're paying to heat them, and as part of a wider debate we should see if we can do something without putting that stigma on, because I agree with your premise about that, where people can come in without feeling that they're dependent on the council, but we're doing the right thing. And I think we need to take that opportunity with youth facilities as well. At Eastwood, I know the old Sunnycroft Youth Centre, which Councillor Owen and Longdon worked to get reopened and rebuilt, is closed. It's been closed for weeks and weeks and weeks because we don't have the staff. And that's somewhere where young people would be going of an evening when parents might not be in, but it's simply not there. So there's other avenues I think we should be exploring without the row about if there's things we can do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've said enough. I think there's stuff we can do. I think there's stuff we should be collegiate on, the council can do without spending more and without falling out about. I, for one, will be backing the motion, and I think there should be ways outside of this where we come together to look at some of the points I've raised. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Zodny. Councillor Matt Barney.
Thank you, Chairman. So, again, it's been something of an eye-opener for me since I took up this role, seeing firsthand so many of the incredible, quite literally, lifeline endeavours that are undertaken by the adult social care and public health services of this authority. Day by day, hour by hour, our staff and our services are on hand providing critical support to our residents that find themselves in their most acute times of need. And I never, as has already been expressed several times, we never, any of us, want to miss the opportunity to thank our incredible staff. And going back to the blue badge, it was just, I know it's a very small thing, but we had a turnaround in 2 days, somebody who contacted me through a fellow councillor this week. So we are doing some great things. And I actually think there's a great deal of consensus in this room. I think we're actually mostly all singing from the same hymn sheet here. We all care. We all passionately care. We all want to get the best bang for our buck, to take a phrase which is often put in this chamber from a member who is sadly absent today. Of course, we're all on the side of doing right. But back in May, I was delighted, alongside Jonathan Gribbin and Dr. Councillor Doddy, to approve in our first Cabinet meeting a raft of measures totalling 4.9 million in investment in public health in Notts. And again, I'm sorry it's another list, but it's true. We are investing out of the basis of wanting to do the right thing in our communities. That 4.9 million, to name but a few examples of what it's gone for, has gone towards extra investment in the Food on Our Doorsteps clubs, new funding for strategic mental health services and at Lead in Nottinghamshire in our schools, additional funding to strengthen the existing Rough Sleeper initiative, and more money for the Best Start in Life initiatives. As well as this, using the public health grant, the Council is already addressing some of the public health problems which sadly we might expect to be exacerbated by the cost of living difficulties. This includes vital treatment for substance misuse and services to provide for survivors of domestic violence. Scott and I recently attended a Change Grow live event and heard firsthand the differences these services have made to 3 brave individuals, residents' lives who were coming themselves off a lifetime of substance abuse and dependency. We could recount their stories. Each one of them is incredible. Small, again, just token, but they're not. They're 3 people. The blue badge was a real person. These 3 individuals, real people who benefit from our services day by day, hour by hour. And as part of the implementation of the National Drug Strategy, Nottinghamshire has also received 7.6 million for the years 2022 to 25 for partnership work and to increase the number of treatment places to combat substance misuse. In addition to the monies already invested in these agendas from the Council's Public Health Grant, as part of the Government's implementation of the Domestic Abuse Act, Nottinghamshire has also received an additional 1.54 million this year to strengthen prevention support for survivors of domestic abuse. Again, the importance of these wider support measures was brought acutely home to me recently when I've attended a couple of J9 domestic abuse training events where incredibly brave survivors, both men and women actually, shared their stories and just the reality of the suffering that so many face in their homes that goes unknown. I'm glad and I'm proud that we're able to support these endeavours of just 1 or 2 people, but nevertheless, real lives. I wish we could do more. Every single member, as I said earlier today, wishes we could do more. But it's right that we do stop and that we acknowledge the incredible work that we as a local authority and our staff do every day for the people of Nottinghamshire. Now, Councillor Martin, in his question, suggested that possibly we might be facing cuts in adult social services. And Councillor Lee Waters, in his commentary, made the request to us. He was asking us once again to invest. And there lies the dichotomy of leadership. On the one hand, we face pressures that we've never faced before, and I feel that pain in the adult social services remit and portfolio. But at the same time, we all want to invest more. But where does responsibility lie? And I've so appreciated the comments of Councillor Clark. Obviously, any money we spend now has to be paid for and accounted somewhere. And this government has invested. We invested through the COVID years. We've invested enormously paying the wage bill of our nation through our most acute times of crisis. And now this is the biggest support package that we've ever seen in our history, putting arms of love around our nation for the greatest point we can help. So I'm sorry to bang on, but I do think there is so much we are doing, and I think that we should unite together and celebrate these things we're doing together for the residents of Nottinghamshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. I have 2 other members who have indicated to speak before Councillor Henshaw sums up. Is that so? I call upon Councillor Tracy Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I will ask colleagues to remind me to signal earlier in the future, because following Councillor Barney is always very difficult. The motion focuses on a singular challenge that comes after more than 2 years of singular and certainly significant national and international challenges. So you've heard from my colleagues about the raft of support that's being offered across all departments of this council. My focus, you won't be surprised, is naturally on supporting children and young people. So something we have done and we've committed to continue doing. So if I look at some of the elements of support funding that we have focused through the Household Support Fund, and the latest tranche is March to September this year. That's a £5.6 million tranche. That's something that has helped funding families with children entitled to receive free school meals over the various holiday periods. Phase 3 has been announced and we expect another 5.6 million or thereabouts. We don't yet have the details on how government will allow us to spend that. We know what our thinking is if we have that latitude within the scheme. So far we've provided holiday food vouchers for those in receipt of free school meals to the tune of 2.86 million in the last tranche. And additionally, families with children who are not eligible for free school meal, and that's perhaps because their preschool age, has also been funded to the tune of £56,000. Since 2021, we as a county local authority have delivered the Holiday Activities and Food Programme, and that provides support to children from reception to year 11 who receive benefits related free school meals. So this is out with the other support schemes, and the Holiday Activities and Food Programme, or the HAF programme, spent 1.28 million in 21-2 and has allocated another 2.6 million in 22-3. So we have a commitment to continue delivering that programme to those families going forwards. In my notes, I'd said I was closing, but I will close with a PS, Chairman, in a minute. In my original thinking, I was saying that in closing, I'll make the point that, in my opinion, the best place for children and young people to spend their days is in the safe and nurturing environments of their schools, nurseries, play and community groups. And as so often with motions that are put to this council, I find myself questioning whether the very specific proposal, often ideological or dogmatic proposal, for a single end, actually addresses the concerns that led to it. In this case, I find this too specific a proposal that does not address in the best way, the holistic way, the whole council way, the very many issues that our residents are facing. My PS chairman, in response to Councillor Zadrozny, youth centres, we have very specific issues with recruitment there. We are working very hard on it, but as with other sectors, we do have some recruitment issues. But this council has a provision to be proud of, and as long as I'm in this role, we will continue to maintain that provision to the very, very best of our abilities. On the subject of fracking, Mr. Chairman, you and colleagues will not be surprised to hear me choke on this one. I can't articulate a personal view on fracking because I may at times be on the planning committee, which may at some point have to determine those. But I would say, as the divisional member for the only area in this county that currently faces the potential risk of a fracking application, I could name quite a few card-carrying members of the Conservative Party who are resident in those communities. So I can assure you that not a single one of them is funded by Putin.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Michelle Walsh, please.
I worked first time. I noticed I wasn't actually going to speak, but when Councillor Jackson talked about grandstanding, I actually felt the need to actually stand up. And the reason that I needed to stand up is there's nothing grandstanding about councillors doing when there is a need within their own communities, and bringing that here to this council. Isn't that what we're all about? Not yesterday, the day before, I visited a community kitchen. Actually, it's not in my patch, it was in Councillor Payne's patch, that on one evening alone served 211 meals to local people. This is in an area that's not necessarily deemed as being necessarily disadvantaged, but there was obviously a need there. While I was there, I was talking to a woman there that had 2 small children. One of those children is the same age as my boy, 2.5 years old. I spoke to her for quite some time about the challenges that she faced. And the truth is, there is a massive need in our community, and it's not just those people that we usually assume it is. This person that I was talking to works for this local authority. She's a care worker for this local authority, and she's having to go to a community kitchen to feed herself and her children. That is the reality of the cost of living crisis. That is the reality of what is happening in our communities. And to suggest that we are grandstanding because we care about the fact that things like the Fire Brigade Union are telling us, and they're concerned about how many people, how many households this winter they're going to have to go into, to people that have died in their own homes that are cold, because they had to do it last winter, and they're worried about how it's going to increase, is utterly, utterly disgraceful. This motion was about listening to people that live in every single one of our communities, and in your constituency, Ben Bradley, in Mansfield, where the cost of living crisis is going to hit a lot of people really, really hard. This is a genuine motion to help the people, where the people that we serve. That is all it is. It is not grandstanding. There is a cost of living crisis, and I'll leave you with this. It's not just us saying about the concern of the cost of living crisis. Health Scrutiny Committee, NHS, local ICS report. There are humanitarian concerns regarding the cost of living and food, fuel and energy affordability for a substantial proportion of our population, dilemmas of heating or eating. This may result in short and long-term health impacts such as respiratory infections, excess deaths, so on and so on. It's not just us saying it. It is not grandstanding. It is the reality of people that are living in our communities across Nottinghamshire, including in Mansfield. And I think you are making a big, big mistake not supporting this motion. A massive, massive mistake.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Michael Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we just start by saying Councillor Henshaw shouldn't be castigated for grandstanding for bringing this motion to the chamber here today. He should be congratulated. If this chamber isn't created to debate the most serious issues that face the residents of Nottinghamshire and this country, then what is the purpose of it? And let me just say to you, Councillor Jackson, before we start this debate, because your intention was to do nothing short of humiliate Councillor Henshaw when you set out about saying that he was grandstanding. Tell the 8,600 people in Broxtowe constituency who are struggling with their household bills that Councillor Henshaw was grandstanding when he raised the issue of the cost of living crisis. Tell the 10,303 adults who have missed meals in Broxtowe constituency. That's 1 in 9 people in your constituency, 1 in 5 who have missed their household bills because of the cost of living crisis, that Councillor Henshaw was grandstanding. And do you know what's truly remarkable about the debate that we've heard over the last half hour? We've heard everybody attack the individual proposal around the idea of warm homes. And yet not one of you on the benches opposite have stacked up an argument about why you disagree with that proposal and why it should be ruled out. We've heard time after time after time from each individual cabinet member lined up with a pre-written speech about the good work that the County Council is doing. And I'll be the first to stand here and say the County Council is doing good work. I'll also be the first person to stand here and say central government is doing good work. But the point of Councillor Henshaw's debate and motion here today is that we need to do more. We should be straining every single sinew. And let's just go back to precisely what was being asked here. Councillor Henshaw wasn't asking for socialism in our time. He wasn't asking us to pursue some ideological process. He was simply suggesting 2 things. 1, that the Cabinet should come forward with a report and detail both what the County Council is doing, but also what more it could have done. Well, I tell you what, in the last half an hour, you've written the report by committee. I don't know how many weeks went into writing the speeches from all of you stood here in the chamber today, but if you'd spent a little bit less time preparing pre-written speeches and a little bit more time writing a cabinet report for in October, we'd have had a transparent report that all county councillors would have been able to see what measures were being taken. All the residents we serve, all the businesses we serve would have been able to see what measures were being taken. And the second thing he asked for, not just a specific proposal, as Councillor Taylor suggests, he asked for a wide-ranging report about all measures were taken, as we've heard today. The second proposal was the consideration of warm rooms. And perhaps the most insightful, which is unsurprising actually, because I hold him in the highest esteem, perhaps the most insightful comment he made in today's debate, which clearly wasn't driven by trying to humiliate Councillor Henshaw or debate this argument along party lines. It was about trying to strike a chord of reconciliation and sensible behaviour, was from Councillor Cotty. And I'm not surprised, Councillor Cotty, because you always come to the table and raise the level of debate, and you should be praised for it. And Councillor Cotty essentially in his debate accepted that, whilst he disagrees with the label of warm homes, in some way, shape or form, the County Council to some degree is already carrying out that proposal. We already have, I think you said, Councillor Costi, I don't want to misquote you, facilities at the moment that are open and available to people. So why not just include in the Cabinet report in October that Councillor Henshaw is asking for a declaration that the County Council already does have some warm homes? It already has County Council libraries that are open. It already has children's centres around the county that are open. Let's be proud about it. Let's declare that that's what we're already doing. And I'm perfectly happy for you to stand there as a Conservative administration and take credit for it. And I tell you what, I'll share it with my residents and say that's what the County Council are doing. But instead what you've chosen to do, with the exception, the honourable exception of Councillor Cotter today, is to obfuscate, is to throw smoke, is to not accept a motion that was put in good faith by an honourable individual trying to help not only the good residents that he represents in Mansfield, but all of the people we represent here in this council chamber, whichever party we come from, and none. And I will finish by saying the government are trying. They are trying to resolve these issues. It's not difficult. We hear today from the Bank of England that the economy has already tipped into recession. These issues can't just be resolved, but the whole point of the national state and the local state is that in times of emergency, like we saw in COVID, the state steps in. So for Christ's sake, in the ensuing few minutes that remain of this debate, accept the motion, get behind two sensible proposals, let's see the report transparently in Cabinet, which you've effectively already written today, and let's work cross-party to do everything we can for the people facing the worst public health crisis since COVID and the Second World War that this country has ever seen. Congratulations, Councillor Henshaw, on bringing a well-meaned motion to this debate in Chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. I've got two more speakers. For that.
Can I make a point of order, Mr. Chairman, please? Yeah. You can take 90 or you can take 70. I'll take your choice in that. I wish to just clarify and make sure that we're speaking to the motion, because I think it's been misrepresented, Chairman, in the last few speeches. And point of order number 70 is members not speaking to subject under discussion. I just want to make sure that when we are voting, people understand what we're voting on. Is that acceptable? Thank you. I just want to make the point, Mr. Chairman, very clearly, and I've just picked it up in what Councillor Welsh and Councillor Payne have said. They've said that we're voting on a report and that we're voting on a cost of living challenge. I've said and we've said, and I want to make this very clear, we agree with that challenge, we agree with that premise. I agree with the premise of a report, and as John said, the point about making that clear, about presenting that to members, absolutely happy with that. What we're voting against is what the motion says, and this hasn't been put across, I think, in the last few speeches, Mr. Chairman, hence my point of order. What the motion says is it doesn't ask for a report, it asks for us to support the implementation of a policy of warm rooms. Now, that is the only point of this motion that we object to. I'm happy with the report, I'm fine with the report, but I cannot amend a motion that says implement warm rooms to say not implement warm rooms. That's not within the Constitution. I can't do that. We've checked that with the monitoring officer before the meeting. So I just want to make absolutely sure, Mr. Chairman, that we're clear, that we're not voting against a cost of living challenge, crisis, whatever you want to call it. We're not voting against that premise. I'm voting against the point of the motion that says to implement a policy of warm rooms. That is what we're challenging, and we're very clear about that.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I call upon Councillor David Shaw to continue the debate.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I wasn't going to speak on this motion, but the debate's been really really interesting. Taking points that I don't think this side of the House or the Chamber is questioning anything to do with the people's and children's services in this building. What we're questioning, or what this motion is questioning, is the missed opportunity by this government to actually impose a proper levy on those energy companies, a proper windfall tax that would have been passed down to the people. That's the thing. And I'm going to give you an example, because what the energy companies have done, they've actually increased the levy from 14p to 44 pence a day on the standing charge meter. So if you've got a gas and electric meter, which most people have, it's gone from 14 pence to 44. I also want to pick up on Councillor Michelle Welsh's comment about the fire service finding people cold and dead in the homes. I totally agree with you. But come 30th of October, the clocks will go back 1 hour. Come 30th of October, people who are not able to heat their homes or light their homes will find alternative ways of doing so, and usually via candles. And that is also a major danger that we're facing, is the fire service is being cut back because of the recent cuts, and also people are going to find alternatives. We have, on the opposition, I feel, on the opposition, we've got a laissez-faire, missed opportunities here, rolling back of the state, people helping themselves to help themselves. People haven't got access to these services because they don't know how to access these services. So we should be actually there in the forefront, dropping a leaflet off to say, this is what the County Council can do for you. If you cannot get on the internet, please ring this number. I will wholeheartedly support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Boyd Elliott.
Thank you, Chairman. As Chairman of the relatively new Overview Committee, I would normally welcome the role of our committee being recognised so soon in a motion to full council. Unfortunately, this motion misunderstands the role scrutiny will play and misrepresents what was discussed regarding our work programme. Scrutiny, for it to work well, depends on county councillors from all political sides coming to these meetings ready to examine issues in depth, in an open-minded, constructive manner, leaving political allegiances and headline-seeking instincts at the door as far as they possibly can. It should be healthily removed from the publicly seeking political Punch and Judy environment we sometimes see in other places. I accept that Overview is in its infancy, and members, and to a degree officers, are at the start of a sharp learning curve about the scrutiny process. But today's motion, seconded by Overview Committee member Councillor Fole, shows a lack of understanding of the role of scrutiny committees will play. Yes, previous speakers have already criticised the political message in this motion, but in keeping with my new role, I'll talk about the procedural aspect. The motion misleadingly implies that the Council cannot proceed with measures to support people facing cost of living pressures until Overview Select Committee has considered the issue, be that in November or any other time. To be absolutely clear, executive members are not required to delay important policy decision-making to match the work programme of the Select Committee. Therefore, the suggestion in this motion that the Council has not and is not or cannot do anything to tackle the cost of living or any other policy issue until such proposals undergo scrutiny is entirely false. In fact, it's so ridiculous that I struggle to believe this apparent naivety is genuine. Members of our various scrutiny committees have the power to discuss and decide what issues they want to examine and review, and when they wish to do it, as detailed in the Constitution. Only one scrutiny review, task and finish group may be carried out by each committee at any one time. Councillor Fole, as a member of the Overview Select Committee, may agree or disagree with colleagues on what policies we should scrutinise and when. But ultimately, we take a democratic vote on what our work programme should be. In fact, Councillor Fole voted for our work programme at the meeting on the 7th of September, in what was a unanimous vote. which makes the motion before us even more difficult to understand. The scope for the review on the cost of living pressures will be drafted and agreed in time for the review to commence as soon as the current review has been completed. The review will be broader in scope than solely the cost of energy, noting the impact of other factors on the cost of living. It will not prevent initiatives already taking place to help people or delay forthcoming plans, but will take the outcomes of this work into account and examine how this can influence our future work. I must also emphasise, Chairman, that the right to review, learn and recommend improvement is not exclusive to our select committees and the scrutiny process. For instance, Councillor Cotty explained moments ago, with regard to the Household Support Fund delivery, that he and his officers are already themselves using the learning and outcomes from the previous 2 phases of the Household Support Fund to inform and improve delivery in relation to the forthcoming 3rd phase. So, Chairman, I'm disappointed by this motion today, particularly in my new role. In fact, I'm actually quite annoyed that so soon after we have embarked on our new scrutiny journey, the name of overview is being used, be it accidentally or deliberately, in such a negative and overly political way. If the members of this council, especially those appointed to the various scrutiny committees, generally want to make the best of this valuable new mechanism and contribute to good policy making in the interest of our residents, then this will require a more mature, constructive approach than perhaps we saw from some on the 7th of September, or than we see in this motion today. I will be voting against this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. No one else indicated to speak. I call upon the proposer of the motion. Councillor Paul Henshaw has 5 minutes to sum up.
Obviously, the 5 minutes can be extended at your discretion, Chair. So if I do drag on a little bit, I'll call you on that. Thanks to everybody then thanks to everybody that supported the motion. It's the first time I've ever been accused of grandstanding or being naive, but here again, if the cap fits, wear it. Councillor Bradley, the human face of the caring Tory party. I'm glad to see your strident views over the years have softened. Brilliant, well done. Ably supported by the Councillor Jackson, the failed candidate for the Tory group's leadership in the campaign, but there you go. You've got to make your mark somewhere, Richard. Get cracking. Well done. Yeah, I know. But there's been 1 or 2 actual good points that's been raised in relation to our debate. And it's brilliant that we can actually have a debate, because there are certain parts of the world that you can't have a debate like this. And I fully extend my view that living in a democracy, people should have alternative or different points of view, and you should be able to debate those points of view logically, radically sometimes, and come to a point of view. Sometimes I don't agree with the point of view that we come to. Just shows you what you need to do to make sure that you get your points of view over is win an election. You've got to win elections in a democracy. So that's what we've got to take on board. Councillor Fowler ably supported the motion. The point that Councillor Gowland made in relation to how do we pay for this, I think was valid. I mean, it may come out tomorrow that the Conservatives are scrapping bankers' bonuses. It's okay to give people that's got plenty of money extra money, you know, the old adage, you know, to make the poor work harder, you give them less, and to make the rich work harder, you give them more. You know, that's been one of the, tenors of the Conservative philosophy for years. And do we agree with President Biden? Trickle-down economics never work. Well, that's open for debate. Let's look at it. The interesting point that Councillor Zarozny made in relation to the scrapping of the Green Levy. I mean, I don't think it's a good idea to scrap the Green Levy, because the government made a commitment that by 2050 they would be carbon neutral. Now, when you look at the situation that happened in Pakistan in relation to 4/5 of the country being submerged in water. I think of the climate emergency. We've all got to do our bit, irrespective, and make sure that we do something, because if we don't, River Trent might come up there and it might be in here in a few years. I'll not see it, but some of you might. You know, so we've got to look at the climate issue. It's something that we must take on board. Now then, Councillor Bradley, is there a cost of living crisis? Is there? Through you, Chair? Is there a cost of living crisis? Right. So you agree that there is a cost of living crisis, and I think everybody in this room agrees that there's a cost of living crisis. And people in my division and people in Nottinghamshire are going to be struggling. They're going to be struggling to pay their bills. Now, Councillor Taylor ably puts forward that she wants to defend and look after children. I agree totally, and she does some good work. But there's going to be children in Nottinghamshire that are going to be freezing cold. They're going to go to school perished. You know, that's not right, and we should be able to do something about that. Now, Councillor Barney, I've got a lot of respect for that chair. He's a caring and compassionate man, but unfortunately, his caring and compassion is going to be subverted by the need to be part of a Tory group that don't necessarily agree with what he does. And in the essence of collective responsibility, is going to have to vote for something that he possibly won't want to vote for. So I feel sorry for you in that respect. Right, let's have a look what else I've got. Yes. Sorry. Are people going to be cold this winter? I mean, that's the basic question. Are people going to be cold this winter? Can I have a bit more, Chair? Anyway. Please, everybody, I'm not trying to grandstand. I'm trying to stick up for people that need somebody to say on their behalf they're going to be cold, they're going to be hungry. It's an audacious situation that people are going to food banks, Councillor Welsh. In 21st century Britain, people are going to food banks. It's absolutely outrageous. Anyway, I've done my grandstanding. Can we all support this motion? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can we have a recorded vote, please? We have to do hands first.
Hands first.
Hands first.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. We now put the motion to the vote.
Recorded vote?
After the hand vote. After the hand vote. All those in favour of the motion, please show. All those against? (32). The motion has fallen. 23 votes for, 32 votes against. There's been a call for a recorded vote. All those...
10 hands, please.
Okay, we will have a recorded vote.
Okay, I think everybody's here in the chamber, unless members say there's somebody missing. Yeah, so we're ready to go ahead.
Okay, colleagues, for the recorded vote, I'll read out members' names. If you could indicate nice and clearly, please, whether you're for, against or abstain. And we'll start with Councillor Adair.
Sorry, Chairman or Chief Executive, so much noise going on around me. I didn't hear your question.
For or against, Councillor?
Against.
Thank you, Councillor Adair. Councillor Adams. Councillor Anderson.
Against.
Councillor Bailey.
Against.
Councillor Barney. Councillor Barnfather. Councillor Bradley.
Against.
Councillor Butler.
Against.
Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Camilleri. Councillor Carlton. Councillor John Clark. Councillor Neil Clark.
Against.
Councillor Corden. Councillor Cotty.
Against.
Councillor Creamer.
For.
Councillor Darby.
For.
Councillor Deakin.
For.
Councillor Doddy. Councillor Eddy.
Against.
Councillor Elliott. Councillor Fielding.
For.
Councillor Fowle. Councillor Guilfoyle. Councillor Gowland.
For.
Councillor Henry.
For.
Councillor Henshaw.
For.
Councillor Introna. Councillor Richard Jackson. Councillor Roger Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Kerry. Councillor Lawton. Councillor Lee. Councillor Martin. Councillor McGrath. Councillor Meakin. Councillor Moxon. Councillor Ogle.
Against.
Councillor Owen.
Against.
Councillor Payne.
For.
Councillor Place.
For.
Councillor Purdue-Horan.
For.
Councillor Quigley. Councillor Saddington. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Tom Smith. Councillor Taylor.
Against.
Councillor Upton.
Against.
Councillor Waters. Councillor Welsh.
For.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler. Councillor Jonathan Wheeler. Councillor Daniel Williamson. Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Zadrozny. Yep.
Thank you, members. There's still 23 for, 32 against, so the motion is lost. Thank you. Thank you, members. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much. So it's my chairmanship, Ordinary Chief Exec, but we've finished very early this evening. So we continue with council meetings like this. Thank you very much. Just one thing before we all go. I thank everybody who supported on the raffle. We've raised £150 for the Ukraine Centre. My thanks to Gilly, Wendy and Laura for selling the tickets. And the prizes are as such. First prize was ticket number 454 for the Forest Picture, which goes to James Harvey. Second prize, a bottle of whiskey, number 284, Gordon Wheeler. Third prize, bottle of port, ticket 460, Richard Butler. And the fourth prize, bottle of wine, number 91, Sheila Place. But thank you very much, everybody.